Welcome back to Ham Radio. This is Kimber York, the Administrative Coordinator for the NCA, the Novo Collegian Alliance. And today we've got a really exciting episode for you. Our host, Ben Brown, is interviewing our president, Bill Rosenberg. He has a very long history of being involved with New College. He was actually entering class of 73, I believe, and he has served on the NCAA. Remember, that's not the same as the NCA. The NCAA in the early 2000s, and then again later in the 2000s, even served as the board president for a while. He's got a lot of experience, and today Ben is going to talk to him about bringing that experience to the NCA, to the situation that New College finds itself in now. And I don't know what they're going to get into, but hopefully it's going to give you some insights into what we're trying to do for the community, and what we hope the community is willing to respond to and get involved in with the NCA. So with that said, I'm going to hand things over to Ben.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. So glad to be doing this. Rosenberg has been involved with the Novo Collegian Alliance, or NCA, since the beginning. I have not, and I was not very involved in the beginning. I was very wrapped up in New College Alumni Association affairs. So this is a chance for me to learn about the early days of NCA, to relate it to the present and where we're going. I could tell that this was an organization that had strong bones and a future, and that's why I joined the board a couple of months ago. So without further ado, Bill, perhaps the first thing you could talk about is your own history with New College, like being a student and your activities then, and then how you eventually ended up relating to the alumni community and the broader community.
Sure. And first, thank you, Ben. You've been a great addition to the board, and we're happy to have you. And I know the work you did for NCAA. It was not fun toward the end. So again, much appreciation for that. And thanks for the interview and for being here. I think it's really important for the community to get to know as much about the NCA as they possibly can. So I'm happy to try to put out what I've got. My association with New College is like so many other people's. I took a really long and winding road, both getting here and then being there and graduating and then afterwards. But as we were talking about, I started in 1973 as a transfer from a community college in New York City, and so got involved in an experimental program there. Found out about this amazing place it looked like called New College, and went down there as a prospective, and it turned out to be everything I was hoping for. So I applied, and happily they admitted me. So started out there, and found my way around, and I loved the community from the minute I set foot on campus. It was so different than anything I'd ever encountered in education before. It was really a community of people that was there because they wanted to learn. They wanted to be there, and wildly individualistic and wildly intelligent. And we were kind of given free rein to take it wherever we wanted to take it. And I was typical. I started as a Nat Sci major. I was going to be a biology major. And I held on to that until I figured out how much math was involved. I was a terrible math student. I mean, miserable. So I had a professor who shall remain nameless, who said in one of my first evaluations that perhaps Mr. Rosenberg might want to consider another line of work. And so I did. And I did in a particularly, what I think, Novo Collegian way. Floundered for about a year. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Went into social sciences, did a whole bunch of things, wasn't really sure until I took a course called The Medieval Experience. Absolutely, it was done by Henry Graham. Absolutely fell in love with the time period, the culture, and with his enthusiasm and my ability to kind of look at what I wanted within that discipline and where. That's what I wound up graduating in as a medieval studies major. And I really found a topic that I loved deeply and explored deeply, and was given the freedom at New College and the guidance to explore it freely. So, there are people that have said this over time, and I really believe it to be true, that New College, if you do it and you do the experience, is transformational. And I truly believe that. It's transformational in individual ways, again, different ways for different folks, but I had always been a lackadaisical scholar. I was crummy in high school. I didn't apply myself, didn't study a whole lot. When I got there and I did that and found that discipline, I just loved doing it and it came naturally. And so it was transformational in the way that I approached education. So that was how I got there. I mean, the things that happened along the way are varied and colorful, but I love the place. Nobody believed I could graduate, including my parents, a lot of times myself. And when I did, it was an utter moment of triumph. I still remember walking around waving my diploma in Hamilton Center after the graduation, looking at myself going, you actually did this. And so, yeah, it really affected me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I've spoken in other ham radio podcasts about, but yeah, it is a remarkable place and a very different way of relating to education. Instead of education being this sort of burdensome like list of tasks that you have to do, it's much more freeing and motivating. So you finish college, and how, at what point do you come back around and say, well, I'd like to keep up with New College in some way? Could you describe that journey?
Yeah, sure. I think like a lot of us, I I got involved in the Sarasota community in latter years, in the late 70s and early 80s. As a matter of fact, I got full-time employment there after I graduated for a while. I was working for the Longboat Key Police Department and as a dispatcher and did that to make some money. Was living in a little duplex on 42nd Street off Trail that I had rented back then for the princely sum of $50 a month. And so it served me well. And I worked there for a few years until I decided, no, I got to do something. So I sort of was still connected with the college right after I graduated. That would have been about in the early 80s. But then archaeology and medieval studies tugged at me, and I got involved. I went to a program at NYU, a grad program there in anthropology, and was there until, well, no, mid 80s. And then from there, wound up at that point, New College sort of, I hadn't really thought about it a whole lot because I was doing grad school and I was trying to keep ends together and back in New York City, which is where I'm from. And so those intervening probably about 5 years or so, I didn't have much contact with the college. But then after I got out of grad school and after I was kind of working around in archaeology, I started checking what was happening again and sort of what was going on. I was getting the nimbus. So I was reading a lot of my classmates, what had happened, what they were up to, beginning families, beginning careers. It was a lot of fun to read. And I slowly kind of I said, this is a comfortable place. This is a place where I've always felt at home. And so I want to do what I can to make sure the place endures and perseveres and be involved in ways that I could help. So there was that gap of 5 years, and then I sort of got back involved more and more into the 90s.
Yeah. Um, like being someone who studied medieval people and their mores and the way they related to each other and everything, like how does it affect how you see the world now? Like, does it ever give you a lens to look at politics or like current events, or like, I'm just curious. I've done a little bit of medieval studies. Like I took one class in college. I like political philosophy. So there are some from that period, but I don't have the depth that you do. I'm just curious, like what it is about these people that you find so appealing.
Well, there's a couple of things really, and it sort of led back into the political side of it. But I mean, I I I liked the art. I saw the Book of Kells for the first time, and I went, "Wow, this was done, you know, 900 whatever AD, I forget the exact year, but yeah, it was done way back then." And you look at the technology that must have involved in that time period to create those fantastic designs. I said, "I've got to know more about the people that did this," and wound up doing cultural studies on the Druids and on the Celts. But the truth of the matter is, what I found resonates today. I believe that things are cyclical in a lot of ways. Technology aside, you can say whatever you want about how technology has or hasn't improved our lives. But those folks using the technology of the day duplicated a lot of the things that we did, the political intrigues, the ideological, left wings, right wings, whatever terminology you want to use on them. And so I look at it a lot of times when I think, wow, things are just crazy in the world now. And I look around and say, Yeah, well, they were in the 1300s too, and so yet they went through that, persevered, and moved on. So I think that it's kind of universally cyclical, and that's sort of the lens that perspective has given me.
It is amazing to see the Book of Kells and their structures and poems and things like that. Because as accustomed as we are to this idea of linear progress, it may have a lot of truth to it, but nonetheless, it tends to make us see them as like Philistines, and they're not. And it's interesting. I'm sure people could have all kinds of complicated gloss on what I just said. So forgive me. Okay, so coming back, Novo Collegian Alliance and New College of Florida. Speaking a little bit of sort of a cyclical nature of life on Earth. Early 2023, this real sort of crisis emerges at New College. How could you describe how you were relating to the New College community at that time? Like what kind of you know to what extent you were paying attention, and like how
Sure.
you reacted to that event?
Sure. I had stepped back again a little bit after I'd stepped off the NCAA around 2008. Again, I sort of I was very involved in Texas politics. I was on the state executive committee for 10 years. And so, and my wife was a county chair. So I was very, very involved in Texas Democratic politics, which is a lot of people will tell you an oxymoron. I would beg to differ with them, but it was tough. And I, again, sort of keeping an eye on what was happening at New College and started following. It's interesting how that worked out, becoming more aware of the national trend towards more conservatism. And I wondered, New College had always been an oasis in the storm. Sarasota had always been a fairly conservative community, and yet New College existed there from its founding through 23, really, as this sort of bastion, this little island of blue in a sea of red, if you will. And so I was wondering, is the college going to make it through this? How are we going to survive? What changes are going to happen? And when I still had contacts with some of my friends and some of the other folks that I'd gotten to know on the NCAA. And so I started hearing rumblings about what might be happening. Remember, I was aware of that first effort about 2 or 3 years prior to 23, when one of the legislators in Florida tried to basically get New College rolled into one of the other units of the state university system. So I was still friendly with a lot of folks, and I talked to that time President Don O'Shea about what was going on, and he told me that things that they would probably be able to get through it, and they did at that point. Although, in a very telling way, somebody that we probably recognize by name, Joe Gruters, who was state senator at that time, said to us, "You had better be prepared because they will come for you again." And I remembered that. It just burned into my brain. And I said, okay, we survived this time, but man, we've got to do something or they're going to come back around. And sure enough, I mean, I think we started to do stuff. I mean, when Pat Oker got appointed president, I said, oh boy, Pat will probably start to turn things around. And
Right.
hopefully, we were very hopeful about that. And then came that miserable day when apparently Ron DeSantis became aware that New College existed and he needed a model. He needed something to work on. So low hanging fruit, canary in the coal mine, whatever analogy you want to use, and reasons why. And that's a whole other topic that may or may not be fruitful for discussion today. But in any event, this happened. And so that when the day that we all remember when Rufo did that, when DeSantis appointed the new trustees and basically fired Pat Oker, I knew things were not going to go well. And so at that point, I said, I've got to, stay closely in touch and aware and involved with what's going on. Because we had a whole group, of students at that point that didn't bargain for this and were going to be affected. And so
Right.
that's how that started. There's more to it, and I don't know kind of where we want to go with this, but the actual founding of the NCA was an interesting one. From 2020 on, when we realized that there was going to be a problem and that they were going to probably be coming for us again, a number of former NCAA board chairs had stayed in touch over the years. There was myself and Mike Campbell and Cindy Hill and Colin Boyle, who was on the board at that time, but all of us kind of just sort of it almost seemed organic. We all sort of came together in our mutual horror and outrage and about what was happening. But there was a lot of chaos at the beginning, as you'd expect. There were a lot of competing organizations that came to light about, we're going to do this for New College, we're going to do that for New College, and there was a lot of flailing around and efforts that, in the short term might have been really helpful, but in the long term they didn't have the legs to sustain. So we got together and began to talk more and more and say, this thing that we wanted to do since 2020, I called it at one point. I said jokingly, I said we ought to just call ourselves the Council of the Elder Druids and move on with it. So, and that's sort of what happened. There were a core group of about 6 of us that got together and said we are outraged enough and committed enough to say we do not want to let this educational model, this institution that did so much for so many of us, go down the tubes because of political ideology, which was happening. That's really how the NCA got started in 23.
You talk about the like it 2019. I think it was actually early 2020 when this first sort of merger proposal emerged, and you said you took a 5-year gap after you graduated before you kind of reconnected with the alumni community and it got more involved. And I took a 10-year gap. And so that was actually around late 2019. And because I graduated in 2009 and I got on the official NCAA Formal Alumni Association board then. So then the takeover, the first sort of merger proposal thing, takeover attempt in a sense, happened as you noted in early 2020. And I wasn't really in touch with you very much then, but I had a similar impression that like this was a real bad sign about the relationship between the college and the legislature. And I'm sure that it's not a big coincidence that there was a new presidential search not long after. And that was I think a valiant attempt to correct some of the issues with the relationship with the legislature. I had that same sense that you had. I wasn't so much aware of Gruder's specific statement, but just from the descriptions that O'Shea would give about his conversations with the lobbyist and that kind of thing, I had the same, like this relationship is really in a bad place. That's what I thought, but it's super complicated and I did not expect I guess if I had really thought about it, I don't know what I would have come up with, but I ended up not expecting the brutality of the takeover, like the way the students were left in lurch, the way the students are being treated today.
Well, let me say this.
Yeah.
Let me jump in on this and say, because one of the things that helped make that happen, and you're right, the brutality of it was striking. We lost a number of absolute allies that were powerful people and that were able to shield and protect us. Bob Johnson, Senator Johnson, was an absolute hero to this college. And there were others. There was the head of the foundation at that point. And again, I pause a second, name is escaping me. The general, what was his name?
General Heiser, probably.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, Roland Heiser. But there were different people, but Johnson and some others up in the legislature really shielded us from some of the potential problems. And when they left the Senate, they left office, we were sort of really unprotected at that point. And I will tell you that Ron DeSantis, who set out to do this, as we all know, was absolutely ruthless. Once he set his sights on New College, was absolutely ruthless in how he went about this, involving Christopher Rufo and other folks who were fitting with his model. We call it mission aligned. Some other folks call them conquistadors, but their language was very martial. Chris Rufo in particular, we're storming the tower, we're over the wall. It was all very, very, very bellicose, and it really worried a lot of us and affected a lot of us. So I didn't mean it, but I think losing the political allies that we had really had a big part of this.
Yeah, it was very clear in 2019 that the relationship was poor. The legislature was unhappy that the college had initiated a plan to expand and taken on public money to do that. expand facilities and faculty, and then hadn't realized the enrollment that it needed to make that all work. And then there was no recourse to any of the. Yeah, I think you're very right. I mean, General Heiser was such a publicly minded person, really. Anyway, I could go on and on. You analyze that more succinctly and accurately than I could. So in 2023, we're kind of back again. It's a real deja vu experience at first. We don't know quite what's going to happen. I really concur with your assessment of like very productive people who are struggling to get organized and these different groups emerging. And I would argue we're still in that place to some extent today. I think we'll talk about NCA's accomplishments. I mean, it's become a much more robust organization, but in terms of, I'm very interested in like all those alumni out there who aren't exhausted because they haven't been that involved in all this. There's thousands of them. And like, how do they relate to this? And I still think someone like that, if they're interested in learning more or getting involved, they come and they see a little bit of an alphabet soup of organizations. That's not to say there's anything wrong with any of these organizations. It's to say we aren't marketing proper, like how to communicate the lay of the land to people is still a question we face. I'm just sort of curious for your thoughts about the evolution from the early days to now and how we can deal with that.
I mean, it's a conundrum because even when I was involved with the NCAA back, in the early 2000s, we faced some similar issues. We didn't have a plethora of organizations at that point, and the institution was relatively stable. And maybe that stability kind of begat complacency and sort of, well, New College could take this place in the back of someone's mind who's busy trying to get a career together and remember it kind of through rose-colored glasses. This is the place that helped make me, but I'm kind of working on my career. It'll be there. And I think we all lost sight of how ephemeral the place really was, the ideal, the ethic, and how easily it was co-opted. So you're right in terms of the ongoing. I think one of the big milestones, things that I'm proud of about the NCA, is that we've achieved that 501c3 status. It's not as simple as a lot of people think. It was a lengthy process, and it involved a lot of paperwork. I'm forever grateful to our treasurer, Colin Boyle, for shepherding that through. But we're still in the status of building the plane as we're flying it, and I'll tell you why. When we started out, we got to save New College. We got to save New College. We all sort of ran around like Chicken Little trying to figure out ways to how are we going to save New College? As it became clearer what was happening and the long-term goal of what these folks were on about as far as taking us over and what that really meant, we sort of morphed a little bit in terms of what our focus was. It helped clarify it in some ways, and I think that's good. What I'm hoping is that a lot of those alumni that you talk about, Ben, the ones that sort of maybe were not as connected, I'm hoping that maybe if we can get out to them and indicate, that place that was so valuable to you, the thing that was transformational for you, is being destroyed before your eyes. And what we're trying to do is preserve the model, preserve the history, and make sure that gets perpetuated. And whatever guys New College or the New College mission takes going forward is something that the NCA is really closely focused on. I will say one thing on this specifically because we've seen it. This confusion between the competing I don't even say competing, but these coexisting organizations is a problem. NCA and NCAA are very easily confused. So if somebody gets an outreach from the NCA, a lot of times, oh, well, yeah, it's the NCAA, and they've been taken over. The heck with them. So it's like this idea of clarity of marketing. I think we've come to understand over the 4 years almost that this has been going on, that we have to be crystal clear about what it is that we do, and yet it's changing and kind of evolving even as we go day to day. So I think that's part of the challenge that we have at the NCA is that letting our constituency know, letting those thousands of alums out there knows that here is the clear and present danger. Here are the ways in which we are trying to mitigate that. Alt grad, we're still helping students. Alt grad is an amazing event. I was at that one that went on last year, and it was just inspiring in so many ways that the students themselves chose to attend that and make that their final statement at New College. Here's what we think matters to us, and we're going to say it. So, I think all those things we have been deeply involved with helping the students coordinate that and put it together. So all of these things that we have been doing are critical. They're part of the evolving picture, and of course, the issue with all of that is like most everything else in this world, it runs on money. And a lot of this is not free, and this is our big challenge. There are all kinds of efforts out there right now. A lot of people I know are aware of an effort to privatize the college, to redo it and privatize it. What's going to happen with that? I don't know. We're involved with it now. We're studying it. We're trying to help where we see that it makes sense. But I think getting that clarity of message out to that constituency that's out there that hasn't done a lot, I think is one of our biggest challenges. And I know we're working on it, but we need to continue to work on it and hone it even further.
Yeah, when I was Alumni Association chair so that was from mid 2023 to early 2025. And I truncated my term in office by resigning fairly loudly. I would go to the college a lot. I would travel to Sarasota a lot, and I would always make sure to ask for a meeting with the student government. I would talk to them. And so I kind of had a sense of like what the current students were like and how they were seeing things. I've lost that. I haven't been to Sarasota since late 2024. But what's really interesting is they want to have another alt grad. I mean, I've been kind of wondering, every year a new class comes in, they have a whole new set of perspectives. They're being recruited by the people running the college now, right? Not by Patricia Oker or Don O'Shea. And so how do they see things? But we have students who want an alt grad this year, which actually surprised me that it's still an important program. And I don't think, I think the students have gotten a really raw deal in all of this from the beginning of 2023 till now, just almost treated as like props or, I really felt in General Heiser's time, the students were the reason the college existed. Like they were why all of us who put time in to support the college were doing it for their sake. And like, that's really the life of a college is the current students. And I think that ethic has been lost. Sorry, I'm rambling. What I'm getting at is we actually have to plan an alt grad for this coming spring. It's important that we and I don't think a lot of alumni realize that we have that task ahead of us.
And it costs money. I will say to your point, it is interesting the agency that we have lost, both students and faculty, the consultative, egalitarian mindset that we just do not have anymore. That's been completely taken away from us. When I was on the NCAA, I went to at that time Mike Michelson, the president, and I said, Mike, what can the alumni do for you? Can do for New College? And Mike looked at me and said, I could sure use another scholarship for out-of-state students. So we had a goal. We did that. So a lot of people who know this, you walk into Palm Court still, I don't know how much longer, but for now, you can see those pavers, which were part of that effort. And we raised for Mike and for the college and for the scholarships about north of $250,000 from the alumni, from our constituency, because we were focused, because we had a goal, and because we had a concrete ask. And we had the agency to do that, to be able to do that. So one of the things I think is important is that, and this is the thing that I find difficult to do right now. Now I'm going to ramble a little bit, is how do we preserve that agency? Because clearly the current administration is not interested in it. They're paternalistic. They are patriarchal, whatever you want to say about them. And they know that as folks like that do, we know what's good for you, and we want your opinion, we'll give it to you. So it's that sort of mindset. And that's something we can't allow to slip away, I think, if we want to preserve anything of what the college was about.
Yeah, I mean, I really think there's different attitudes that different administrations could take towards students, and some say, well, we should be more hands-on or more authoritarian, if you will, in like regulating student behavior. But you could still have that attitude and still have you could still be trying to help, right? Like General Heiser, I think, would sometimes pressure former New College president Mike Michelson to, kind of put a little more restrictions on like the student parties and things. And he had a different social attitude, but he still believed in his heart that the students were the reason the college existed, and the point of the college was to support
Yes.
them. And there was like a difference of opinion, and a fairly mild difference. But like this administration, I don't think they care about the student. I think when they make a decision about a facility or hold an event, I mean, I suppose they probably let the students come to the event, but I just don't think they're thinking about it. I don't think that's why they're doing it. And that's to me the greatest tragedy. Okay. So as a pretty new board member, I'm happy to report the bones of the organization seem really strong. And I think about people who probably stayed up late after they had performed their day jobs with issues like incorporating NCA and getting a tax status and bank accounts and the other things that we have. And it is impressive. And the organization too has meetings and regular committee meetings and a good structure. It has a lot of things, an appropriate insurance policy. This is an accomplishment that isn't more enough. I mean, it goes to your comments before, Bill, about how in the early days, alumni were in a very reactive state, and building the organization was secondary to dealing with the crisis at hand. Well, there's been a huge success in building this structure, but it's still, I think, in a very vulnerable position because it hasn't yet gotten active enough to really draw on the support of really large numbers of alumni. And that's what I'm curious as the president of NCA, how do you see the end of 2025 and 2026, and what kind of things are you excited to use the strong structure that we built to do?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ben, and I think we've talked about it earlier, and I think it remains true. One of the things that we need to do is raise money, but the way we raise money is by being clear about what it is that we are doing. So I think there are a couple of things. One of the things that started to happen, and I'm really grateful to see this, is that as alumni have these alumni have been pretty regular contributors to the NCAA slash the foundation, and they're realizing that the money that they were putting into that organization is not going in any way, shape, or form in accordance with their own wishes. So we've had recently one donor who has shifted his annual donation, which is a substantial one, from the NCAA to the NCA, and that happened, I think, because of contacts he's had with board members. This person knew one of the board members and was able to have a conversation. And so through that, figured that, hey, this is a place that is probably going to be much more in line with what I thought our vision was for my money. So I think if we can continue to hone that message, and I think it's being helped by the new board members, because I tend to forget. I'm an old guy. I mean, really, I'm a geezer. I mean, 70s, 80s, that's a lot of years ago. So I have my cohorts, but there are newer cohorts. There are a lot more that came after me that I think now that we have new board members that are in those different cohorts, yourself, Ben, and we have a few others now. So we span the years more, we span the decades better. And I think more of those outreaches and leveraging and using the personal relationships and contacts we've built up over the years to go out and say, hey, Joe, look, remember when we did all this great stuff and now it's in trouble. And here are the things that we are specifically doing to make that happen. I think we can begin to point to our record and say, look, we've been in existence now for pretty much, over 3 years, and we have a track record of doing these things, augmenting student research and travel, the alt grad ceremonies that go on, preserving a lot, because again, as was alluded to before, these folks that are taking us over don't really care. In fact, they're trying to eradicate our traditions and methods of operation and replace them with their own. They're really trying to consciously obliterate them. And I think one of the ways that we fight back on that we should absolutely continue to stress to our constituency, is we are going to make sure that the mission and goals and the things about the new college that you attended are still going to be around, regardless of the efforts of the administration, the current administration, to make believe they didn't happen and try to say, no, this is the way it really was. So I'm excited to continue to be able to do that with our expanded board. We have 12 members now, and I think that really helps us in so many ways, because of the different, just as when we were students, different visions, different perspectives, different temporal horizons, all of these things really do nothing but strengthen us, I think.
Do you think that we're just going to take the student research travel grants program and like do it ourselves? Like, is the one that the foundation is running kind of kaput as far as alumni are concerned, or how do you see that?
Well, I see it as, like so much else that's going on there, is unpredictable and just totally unreliable. We just found out recently that, and it goes along with the diversion of funds that they like to do. They'll kind of move money around to suit their own purposes, regardless of what the money was there for. They eliminated funding for the entire second cycle of student grants through the foundation and through the NCAA. And so they're left without money. So these students that need money to go to present at conferences, to further thesis research, are left high and dry. And again, this is a thing that needs a lot of money. It was particularly heartbreaking to me in where we had a couple of requests for funds, one of which we had to say, we can't. We love your project. We love the work you're doing. We don't have the money to grant to you. I would take it out of my own pocket if I could. And a lot of board members have done that.
Yeah.
They've taken money out of their own pockets to say, this is important enough that we have to fund it. So I would again appeal to all of our constituents, anybody who's seeing this podcast out on YouTube. I would say, look, these are the things that we're doing. We're preserving the legacy. We're really helping our current students to be the students that they can be, despite whatever's being done to sort of eliminate and obliterate the things that made New College New College.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of alumni probably don't realize that there are like super interesting student scholars at New College. They probably think the current environment has extinguished that, but you know, some people are very hardy and they are still there, because I know, because I've seen the applications they put in for SRTG funding, and we frankly have run out of money for that. The other observation I make is NCA 100% has the structure and the bones to deal with that well. Like, we have, you know, a serious person as our treasurer. We have, you know, bank accounts, and we do an annual report. We're a 501c3 organization. If you're not taking the standard deduction, most people take the standard deduction. If you're not, you can write that off on your taxes, those donations. That's the thing I've been surprised as a board member to understand how professionally run it all is on the inside. Again, it's moving to think of the labor of volunteers that built that up, which I, you know, am now the beneficiary of as a new board member. I'm a person who actually during the takeover tried to fundraise for the foundation's SRTG fund very sincerely. And here I am now, you know.
Wrong statement, Ben. And to amplify that, once again, you look at our board and the expertise there. We have a board member who chaired the SRTG group back when it was really functional. And I had served on the SRTG committee when I was on the NCAA. It's true. It is absolutely true what Ben is saying. There are students there that are just as brilliant, just as quirky, and just as hardy. I think that's well put, to be able to withstand. And that really embodies the New College spirit. And we have faculty members that are there that are aware of this and that are, again, committed to being there for students in ways that our faculty were pre-23. So I think there are a number of reasons to give to the NCA. I mean, I think if you were a contributor to the NCAA, we're here for you. You don't have to worry about funding being diverted. We put our 990s, our disclosure statements out on our website, www.novocollegian.org. If you want to look at them, they're out there for anybody to go and look at. We are, as a board, more than happy to answer questions that you have about how the funds are being spent, why they're being spent, and on what. So to me, again, in my simplistic view, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if you were giving money, if you care about New College at all, about the New College that you attended and what it means to you, to me, it's a simple equation. Don't give to the foundation because you don't know where your money's going. It could be going to any number of places that you don't particularly agree with. But the NCA is absolutely committed, as we state in our mission and our guiding principles, to maintaining the legacy of the college, to preserving its future in whatever way that happens. But yes, Ben, you're right. The bones are strong. It is an honor and a privilege to serve with everybody else on that board. I just cannot speak highly enough of all of them. They are the commitment, the time investment, the monetary investment. It's incredibly moving. And I really encourage other alumni. We always talk about one of the positives about this takeover is how a lot of alumni who would not necessarily otherwise have interacted and gotten to know one another have done that because of
Yeah.
this. So
It's the one silver lining for sure. Yeah, no, I've made great friends through this. It's kind of ironic, right? Because it's not a really happy circumstance, but the complexity, such as it is, that I see is that with the student research and travel grants, is the administration knows it's something alumni are sensitive to, and they know it's kind of good PR to do it, and they've nominally dedicated some meaningful funding to it. Not what we'd really like to see, but I think like on the order of $25,000, something like that. I could be wrong on that figure, but not like a really large amount, but not meaningless either. And so we really are like alumni, and this was true when I was NCAA chair, but it's even more true now. New College Alumni Association chair, when it's even more true now, that the alumni have just had it with the foundation and they perceive it as a shell game. In other words, like even if the budget printed at the beginning of a fiscal year says that X amount is dedicated for X purpose, you can't reliably draw on that later in the year. You don't know what Sydney Reuters and the team there have actually done. I actually imagine Sydney Gruder herself is frustrated and the demands that Corcoran is putting on her. But in any case, like, yeah, we really are abandoning them. Yeah, okay. And we really are serious about collecting donations for SRTG and NCA, and then like having a legitimate, rigorous process to distribute them. We have this already, and you can call us up or email us, and you will get an intelligent person and not just a PR hack.
yeah, that's very well put. It's a lot. It really kind of clarifies a lot of what I'm talking around. And just to clarify, you're right on the 25,000. We used to get routinely, we would get 50,000 on in the year, sometimes more than that. And even through that, I mean, we had the process was incredibly rigorous. We got a ton of proposals, and it was an education for the students because they were writing maybe their first grant proposal in a friendly environment. So we could give them positive criticism, saying, "Hey, look, here are the things we see. You could make it stronger this way. We can't grant right now, but please, we encourage you to resubmit next cycle with the comments that we've made, taken to heart." So yes, there is a process. And again, I say that, in a lot of ways, I don't really care if the foundation, they know what we're doing. Clearly, we're not operating in a vacuum. They're aware that we exist. They know what we're doing. They've chosen to ignore us mostly. They'll come back with a rebuttal editorial sometimes, which usually proves the fact that they don't know how to govern. They're missing the point. They're completely antithetical to what New College was. I mean, I don't even think it's capable. I used to think, well, let's get them together on the wall and, have a few beers and let's talk about this. As Ben said earlier, there's not a lot of content to them. They're driven pretty simply, and it's definitely not student centric the way New College was in years past. But we at the NCA are absolutely student centric, and community centric. We are here for the alumni. We are here for all of you, all approximately 6,000 of you. We represent you. We represent what you remember about New College, not what it's become in the last 3 years. Now, again, I take nothing away from what Ben said. There are students there, and we help them. There are students that are brilliant, that are motivated, that want to learn, and there are faculty there to help them. So, but we can't do our job effectively without your dollars. I mean, I'm going to sit here and just make the naked plea. We need your money. We really do, and it's going for a good
We
purpose.
really need people to embrace the subversive act of helping the current students and not just writing them off. That is very affirming subversive act. And look, I myself was guilty of it. I said, the way this program is running, I can't believe there's that many real serious students left at this point. And it's not true. So, the hardy weeds grow through the cracks in the sidewalk. And you got to have admiration for them. And I just think a lot of people have these students have been written off by everyone, right? Like they're certainly written off by the administration. They're just useful because they generate enrollment numbers. They don't care about them. So we should not be the ones to write them off.
We should be encouraging them. You're absolutely right. And we are. I think I know that, we have regular contact. Ben, you were saying, I know we have contact with student government. They know who we are. They know what we stand for. And we're the ones that they come to saying, can you help us out with alt grad? We have no use for what the college is putting together as a supposed graduation ceremony. It doesn't reflect us. It reflects them in their message, which is not what we are here for. So that, and there are so many other affirming things. We have this archive project that we have that is now really getting legs now that we have librarians, archivists, and writers involved on our board, involved with this project. We're really starting to, we'll be launching very soon with the template form for accessioning anything that you want to preserve. If you have a collection of items, Nimbus, different papers, different remembrances of New College that you want to make sure live on in perpetuity, this project is the one to also be involved with. There'll be mailings on this. Again, look on our website about it. But absolutely, another thing that needs money. We've got, resources that need to happen eventually, perhaps, hard storage, digital storage, all of this costs. And so we've been running along, kind of as our treasurer says, in a leaky boat, and the boat is sinking. We really, really, really need.
Yeah, we do. It's tragic to see the structure of the organization and the way it's been very carefully set up, and it just needs a little bit of operating costs to get to the end of 2026, and it can do amazing things. It's the instability of the college is extreme, so that's why we have an archiving project. You can't be sure, if something isn't legally mandated to be preserved, I don't think you can be sure it's going to be preserved.
There's real worry about that. We've had people inquiring about, well, what's going to happen to my thesis? Can I get a copy of that? How is that happening? Everything from that all the way on down. Ben's right. Ben's absolutely right. And again, we talked about it a little earlier. A lot of you saw those pictures in the newspaper where the Gender Studies Department library got put in a dumpster because they didn't particularly agree with what was being taught. And all sorts of gratuitous acts that you can look to. I mean, they just recently denied Professor Reed, a 30-year professor, and denied her emeritus status despite her exemplary record. Why did they do that? Couple of reasons, probably from their standpoint. She ran the gender studies program. She was the faculty chair, and she was a staunch advocate for the faculty, just as that has happened over the years. And for that, she got treated terribly by the administration. And I think there is a huge amount of vindictiveness in that denial of emeritus status. And I think that one event is indicative of what Ben is talking about mindset and what they think and how they operate.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to some quite conservative Republican alumni who were upset about what happened to Amy Reed, which might surprise people. But the thing is, like, she spent, I think, about 18 months on the board of trustees. She took many positions I agreed with. She took a couple I didn't agree with. That's really not the point. Corcoran felt in some sense challenged by the stances she would take. That's really not, those 18 months are really not the point. The point is almost 30 years of public service, taking someone with a PhD, a learned and scholarly person, working at New College for a not very high salary for 30 years, educating generations and generations of students. That's what they tried to dishonor, in my opinion. And it is not the way the college used to be run.
You could have disagreements, and we often did in the past. Lots of things that we disagreed with faculty, students, but the point was it was all, and there's some irony in that, and I am going to say this, there is some irony in their position of, well, we stand for civil discourse and academic freedom. I would qualify that by saying we stand for civil discourse and academic freedom just so long as it adheres to what we think it should be. And that is antithetical.
How
to New
robust
College.
really is the discourse on campus? How's the student newspaper doing? Do the students, can they easily form clubs and organizations? Like, yeah, what realistic venues do they have for self-expression? These are all good questions, And look, I mean, I have to say, like, when Charlie Kirk was murdered, I did my best to offer condolences to the students who were in the college's Turning Point USA chapter. I don't think you can't say, well, you can start an organization about this, but not about that. What I'm trying to say is I don't see the kind of robust discourse that one would have imagined if you took these ideas about restoring civil discourse seriously.
Yeah, I think, as in so many other things, they're set up and staged to fulfill a predetermined goal. The administration has floundered through so many things. I could point to a number of them, but they just, each one of them, when taken by itself, indicates, if you look at it and have the eyes to see it, the clear purpose behind everything they're doing. So in all of their ineptitude, they're absolutely not running a college, but certainly in Richard Corcoran's case, they're lining their pockets. And that, when Richard Corcoran got $900,000 in compensation last year, some of that was taxpayer money. When the cost per student is astronomical compared to any other unit of the state university system, when contractors get most favored nation status if they are buddies with the administration, it's clear to see, and I think it's very indicative of the current state of affairs of the administration of the college.
Right.
So I like Ben's expression of creative subversion. I think that's a lot of what we continue to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, the lobbyist is a sort of contractor, and the lobbying firm, there's a recent news report that the lobbying firm the college has hired as the firm Richard Corcoran was working at shortly before he became president of the college. So you do have to, I'm not saying it's technically illegal. It may not be illegal, but it raises a question, is someone profiting from the college's budget? We didn't usually have to ask these questions quite so much as we do today.
Absolutely. And I think, and again, the NCA is doing its best to give answers to our community, answers that you all can rely on. They're researched. We have another committee. We have a policy group that works very quietly but very effectively, and they know the laws. They know Florida, the Florida statutes, and they work with them. And when they see, as there have been, potential violations of state statute, they will vigorously work against that. And you've seen the statements that we make. A lot of you, if you're reading the media, newspapers, online, social media, the things that get put out there, the things that we put out, again, are answers to a lot of what they don't really want to come to light, and we throw the daylight on them. And we will continue to do that.
Yeah, one thing that really surprised me as a new board member is the quality of the policy analysis that was going on within NCA. And I would actually offer what I hope is a constructive criticism, that we as NCA have to get better at operationalizing but the quality of understanding that people had reached of what is going on, the relation with the accreditor, the relation with the Board of Governors, the internal updates to the college's regulations manual, and a very close eye on foundation Board of Trustees meeting. It was impressive. It's like, and there's ongoing discussion about that in regular meetings in NCA, and these people understand what is going on. It's how I think how we use that for more things, I think, is a real challenge. But anyway, I just wanted to share that I was impressed by it.
I mean it when I say, I'm honored and humbled and moved to be working with everybody here, with you all and the rest of the board. We don't agree all the time. Even with that, we still have things where we disagree. But you know what?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We work them through. We're all working toward the same thing, and it's just an amazing group to work with.
Honestly, those guys could keep talking for another 2 hours. We appreciate that you are here to listen to all the things that they've talked about, the points that they've hit with student travel and research grant funding. Always get that mixed up. Is it student research and travel? I don't know, but it's money that the students need to get all the research and the studying done for their careers. All grad, we've talked about the archives project that's coming up. Bill has been such a great resource for me coming on as the administrative coordinator, and it's really been wonderful for me to hear some of the background of how he got into this, what he's been doing, what his plans are, what his visions are, and his frustrations. I think listening to, how emotional that we all get when we talk about these things, Bill really encapsulates that. His heart is where New College lives. So we appreciate you joining us for this episode of Ham Radio, and we look forward to talking to you in the next one. Until then, this is Kimber York with the NCA. Take care.